I've been living in Philly since 2016, but I thought seeing the city as a tourist might be fun. I took a tour and learned a lot about the city I call home. I gained a new appreciation for Philly's role in America's upbringing. I still don't love the traffic or the parking, but I don't think that'll ever change with any big city. What I do want to change is anyone's mind who's hesitant on visiting the city of brotherly love. It's actually a bona fide hidden gem. Let's dig up this treasure. So I mentioned taking a tour in the intro and learning a lot about Philadelphia from that tour. Well, you can book the same tour I did on Plannin.com. I've teamed up with Plannin because they're a site that not only offers the best hotels and experiences in destinations around the world, but you can also save up to 40% on your next adventure if you sign up using my link in the description or scanning that QR code on screen right now. I decided to test Plannin. Shh! Don't tell them I did this. But I did some mock bookings on their site and compared their prices to official website prices. For instance, I went to the official site of the Museum of Illusion in Philly, and on top of general admission prices, they charged 2 separate fees, whereas on Plannin, there were no fees. So I booked the Philadelphia Electric Cart Tour with a local guide. It was a 2-hour tour, more like an hour and a half since it was on a weekday and not during rush hour, for $69 per person. The cart is smaller than I thought. It can fit up to 6 people, including the driver/tour guide, who happened to be named Carla on this beautiful post-winter morning. Carla was very knowledgeable about Philly, even though she did not grow up here. We started the tour just outside of Reading Terminal Market in Center City, the term locals use instead of downtown. More on Reading Terminal Market later. We started going down 12th Street and took a right onto Market Street, heading west towards City Hall and Penn Square. City Hall is one of the most recognizable buildings in all of Philadelphia and is the largest city hall in America. A statue of the city and state's founder, William Penn, sits atop this insanely large building. From there, we took a right off Market Street and onto 16th Street going north. We passed the famous Love Park before veering left onto Benjamin Franklin Parkway, which cuts through the west side of Center City, passing sites like the Holocaust Museum, the Cathedral Basilica of Saints Peter and Paul, Logan Circle, the Swan Memorial Fountain, the Franklin Institute, the Free Library, the Barnes Foundation, the Rodin Museum, Target, just kidding, and culminating at the Philadelphia Art Museum, which is also the site of the famous Rocky statue and stairs. This is where Carla parked off to the side and let us get out and check out the statue, the Rocky gift shop, which had Rocky music playing inside, and we were able to descend the 72 steps without much effort to the entryway of the museum, which has some of the best views of Philly. I can see why Sly Stone picked it for his iconic movie. After catching our breath, we headed towards the back of the museum, towards the Schuylkill River, and checked out Fairmount Waterworks, one of the country's first freshwater plants built in 1815. We got back into the electric cart and drove east down Fairmount Avenue, where we passed one of the scariest places in the country, Eastern State Penitentiary. We just so happened to feature this place on our Visiting America's Most Haunted Places video, which you can see here. From Fairmount Avenue, we took a right onto 19th Street and drove south to Rittenhouse Square, which is sort of like Philly's Beverly Hills area. It's also home to one of my favorite restaurants in the city, Park, which is an upscale French restaurant that serves breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We turned right onto Locust Street and headed east towards Broad Street, but since there was construction going on, a common thing here, we averted from turning down Broad and instead drove down Pine Street and past a bar called Dirty Frank's, which has a bunch of Franks painted on the side of the building. I could point out Frankenstein, Ben Franklin, Frank Zappa, Frank Sinatra, and Franklin Roosevelt. If you guys know of more Franks on the building, let us know in the comment section. We took another right onto 12th Street and headed south for a bit before making a left onto South Street towards the Magic Gardens, which is an area where Isaiah Zagar decorated some of the apartment buildings and storefronts with mosaic artwork. We turned left onto 9th Street and headed north, where we passed the oldest hospital in the country, Pennsylvania Hospital, which is where my 2 children were born. We then went right onto Locust and saw a bit of Washington Square, passing another one of my favorite restaurants, Tallulah's Garden, before veering right onto Chestnut Street. A small section of Chestnut is cobblestone, and that small section happens to be right in front of Independence Hall, where the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution were signed. Across the street is where you'll find the Liberty Bell. More on that later. Then we took a left onto 5th Street, and then a right onto Market Street towards Old City. Old City is where you can find some of the oldest places in the country. When William Penn designed the city's layout, he started it from the Delaware River, where the border between Pennsylvania and New Jersey lies. Carla informed us that Front Street is the first street west of the Delaware, and because Penn was a Quaker who put God first, there would be no First Street, which is how Front Street got its name. Very interesting, right? In fact, it was the first Front Street in the country, and from there on, many cities followed suit, which is why you find so many Front Streets instead of First Streets across America. On Market Street, we passed the area where Ben Franklin's house was located, and then made a left onto 3rd Street, and then a right onto Race Street. We made another right onto the aforementioned Front Street, and then another right onto Elfreth's Alley, America's oldest residential street. It was apparent to me then why it was a good thing this cart was as thin as it was, because Elfreth's Alley is not much wider than the cart. In fact, it was only wide enough to accommodate horse carriages back in the day, as evidenced by all the boot scrapers in front of the still occupied homes in the alley. Out of Elfreth's Alley, we made a left onto 2nd Street, and then a right onto Arch Street, where you can find Betsy Ross's house. Ironically, it's been proven that Ross was not the first person to create the American flag, but she was the first person to start using 5-pointed stars instead of 6. We also learned that Ben Franklin was the first person to establish property insurance, and the person who established the Philadelphia Fire Department. We passed the Arch Street Meeting House, the largest Quaker meeting house in the world, and Ben Franklin's gravesite. Typically, this is where you would get out and explore Independence Mall and the Liberty Bell Center, but we opted not to because I'll go more in depth on these two sites later in the video. Still on Arch Street, we entered Chinatown, America's 3rd largest Chinatown behind New York and San Francisco. We passed the Friendship Gate, and Carla recommended Penang Restaurant, but I recommend Tom's Dim Sum in this area. Some of the best dim sum outside of Hong Kong and Shanghai that I've ever had. We then passed the Pennsylvania Convention Center, home of the Philadelphia Flower Show, Philly Auto Show, and the famous Reading Terminal Market. We concluded the tour where we started, and I have to say it was informative, enjoyable, and definitely worth it, especially if you want to learn about the history of Philadelphia. If you're visiting and want to book it, be sure to use the link in the description or scan the QR code now. Prior to the electric cart tour, my mother was in town and wanted to check out Reading Terminal Market and the Liberty Bell. So, being the good oldest son that I am, I braved going into the city with all its traffic and congestion and exorbitant parking prices to show her some of Philly's best. We started at Reading Terminal Market, which is located across the street from the Pennsylvania Convention Center. It is home to over 100 vendors, including 4th Street famous cookies, DeNick's, Dutch Eating Place, Baylor's Bakery, Bassett's Ice Cream, Martin's Meats, and Uncle Gus's Steaks. My mother and her significant other got coffee from Old City Coffee, which they said was decent. I figured I had to get something for this video, and Profi's Creperie caught my eye, and my wallet. At $5.50 for a butter and powdered sugar crepe, I was expecting a flavor sensation in my mouth. Cue the wah 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 sound from your favorite 80s game show, because this was a loser.
Defeat.
It wasn't bad per se, but if you've ever had crepes in Paris, or even Disney World Epcot, you know what a real butter and sugar crepe should taste like. This, at north of $5, was a monumental disappointment. I do not recommend. In fact, I don't recommend much at this place. It's way too overpriced. A lot of times, my mantra is, you get what you pay for. And I guess if you're a tourist here for the first time, what you're paying for is the experience. My mom got a steak, aka cheesesteak, from Gus's and was disappointed with that, especially the $18 price tag. The steak place I always go to is way cheaper and always rated one of the best in the city. It's out of the way for most tourists, but if you ever venture into Delco, nearby Delaware County, hit up Delco's Original Steaks and Hoagies in Chadds Ford. Overall, Reading Terminal is kind of cool. I like the vibe, but there's a reason why this was only the second time I've visited in the 9 years I've lived here. In my opinion, there are way better places to spend your time while in Philly. Would I rate it a must-see as a tourist? Probably not. I'd rate it as a something to do if you've done everything else on your Philly to-do list thing to do. If you want to waste money on great Philly food, go to Zahav if you can get a reservation, or Royal Sushi and Izakaya, the aforementioned park in Rittenhouse. Or don't waste your money and visit Taste Bud Heaven for a fraction of the price at places like Shank's Original, roast pork as well as cheesesteaks, or the burgers at Royal Tavern. Manakish Cafe in University City has probably the best shawarma wraps I've ever had. And like New York City, most hole-in-the-wall pizza shops serve slices that are to die for. So yeah, reserve Reading Terminal Market for when you're just so bored staring at the wallpaper in your hotel room. After the market, we took a short drive to see the Liberty Bell. If you can, try to find street parking because lot prices are absurd. I can't even be bothered with looking for street parking, but I always regret it after paying $38 for an hour. So yeah, park on the street if possible. At the time of filming, there's a lot of construction going on. Carla from our electric cart tour told us that 2026 is a big year for Philadelphia. It marks the 50th anniversary of the original Rocky movie and the 250th birthday of America, which was basically founded in Philadelphia with the signing of the Declaration of Independence. So if you're watching, next year might be a great time to visit. And with that said, start searching on Plannin.com now before everyone else catches on and raises their prices. Make sure to use my link in the description or the QR code on screen and save big time on your Philly visit. Be sure to check out hotels like W.M. Mulher & Sons Hotel in Fishtown, which has another of my favorite restaurants on the main floor, or the Hilton Penn's Landing with great waterfront views of the Delaware River, or the centrally located and beautiful Bellevue Hotel by Hyatt in Center City for some great accommodations. We first checked out the Independence Visitor Center, where you're met with displays that point out highlights of the city and in particular the Founding Fathers. Then you have to sort of navigate through a bunch of construction areas to get to the Independence Mall and the Liberty Bell Center, which also has a bunch of educational and historical displays before you make your way to the Liberty Bell. The Liberty Bell itself is suspended about 3 feet off the ground and hangs at the south end of the building facing Independence Hall. The placement is very well thought out and a beautiful display of one of America's most iconic symbols. All in all, I really enjoyed being a tourist for a day in the city I've called home for almost a decade. I highly recommend doing the electric cart tour with a local guide, especially if you happen to get Carla as your tour guide. I also recommend you try to catch a Philly sporting event. There's really nothing like it. Be it the Eagles, good luck getting reasonable tickets for that. 76ers, which is a fun time. Flyers, look out for their zany mascot Gritty. Or the Phillies and their world-famous mascot, the Philly Fanatic. All four are located in the same huge sports complex in South Philly. And while I don't really recommend touristy spots like Reading Terminal Market or the 2 famous cheesesteak spots, Pat's and Gino's, I do recommend getting a steak at other spots like Steve's or Shank's or John's Roast Pork. I also recommend other touristy places like the Rocky Steps and the Philly Art Museum. And if you're looking for something really quirky, check out the Mutter Museum for some dark and eerie entertainment. There's so much to do in Philly. It's not just a weekend from New York City or DC spot. There's so much charm and culture here, let alone its historical significance. And with all the celebrations being planned in and around the city in 2026, Philly might just be the go-to spot next year. Stay on top of it if you're seriously considering a visit. Use my Plannin links and hit that subscribe button. If you thought this video was helpful, smash that like button and share it with your mates. And as always, this is your vacation agent, Kelly, wishing you safe travels.